Okay, once again, we're working on that partnership, that teamwork that enables us to be, I guess, less visible as factors in the outcome of the game and give everyone the feel that the game is kind of flowing by itself. Um, so things that can happen when you are not good partners, and mostly this all flows from the last point there, which is the inconsistency. There's going to be confusion about what's being called, who's calling it. Um, Coaches get frustrated, players get frustrated, officials can get frustrated when they're not collaborating well together. And all of this really detracts from the ability to control the games and administer it in a proper fashion. When that goes on, the crowd generally is going to um, take their cues from the coaches and sometimes from the players. And, they spectators generally don't have the best grasp of the game as it is. So when things are inconsistent or chaotic, they will get really agitated and the whole atmosphere just kind of ramps up and escalates, and you can get some really ugly games. Um, and then, as I mentioned, we want the game to kind of flow and achieve its own kind of natural outcomes, with us stepping in when unfair play interferes with that flow and natural outcome. So when officials are not in sync and are not working well together, there is no flow. Play stops, people are looking around, players can't anticipate what's happening. So we really need to make sure that the officials are in sync and things just generally work out better when that happens. So with a good partnership, we have kind of an even application of the rules. That does not mean you're going to be identical to your partner, but you are going to be consistent. Whether that consistency initially is they know what to expect from one official and they know what to expect from the other, even if it's different, or as you develop and get more advanced and you get to work with higher level officials and get more feedback from evaluators, eventually the games between officials will also become more consistent as well. But not identical. There's a human element and judgment that happens in here, and there's really no way that we're going to eliminate that. When we are consistent, then coaches and players focus on what's going on in the game, because they know what to expect. They're getting their expectations confirmed, and they can adjust their games and play accordingly. When officials collaborate well with each other, there's certain, obviously, learning that goes on from working with someone who does a good job. You can improve parts of your game. You have discussions about things where you're not on the same page, and you help to figure that out. And then when I'm collaborating well with a partner, the main way I can tell that things are going well is I'm not worried about what they're doing. I'm not being surprised by them. I can focus on my primary areas of concentration initially, and even look to there in anticipation of action that's going to happen. And that's when you get your best officiating, is when the officials are anticipating the action that's going to happen and they're catching kind of the first contact, first movements, first actions, and not looking and reacting in response to something that's going on. So the ultimate goal of that officiating partnership is synergy. So we're not just looking for both officials to be officiating their game optimally. We're looking for that cooperation to make the end result better than the sum of the parts. If I'm reffing my best game and my partner has the other areas covered and they're stepping in and helping me on things where I need help, that ultimately makes it better than me individually calling my area correctly and them individually calling their responsibilities correctly. We can make ourselves better if we're good partners. So at the beginning, arrive early. That's something that's always emphasized, but part of arriving early is not just checking out the pool setup and making sure the table's ready and all that stuff. It gives you time to talk with your partner. If you're familiar with them, great. Um, but if it's someone new, you especially need to talk things over with them. Discuss how you like to collaborate. Sometimes I will have a partner who says, you know what, I always want you to step in on that far post. Don't even ask about it. Always pick up that number 2 position. That's the flat on the strong side for the attack referee. And that's most often the one that officials will share or have or pass off to their partners. Um, Invite your partner to help out where needed. If you're the kind of partner who says, I don't want you stepping in and helping, then you are probably not in sync with how we're trying to officiate these days as officiating teams. Let them know when you're expecting them to help without being asked, and let them know when you want them to hold off and wait for you to ask. If you're wearing headsets, discuss, it would seem pretty straightforward. If I'm wearing a headset, I can just tell them what I want them to know. But during the game, a lot of times, you'll be speaking with a little bit of a shorthand to keep things brief and simple and not to distract your partner. So for instance, the big challenge I think now is with that 2-meter area in front of the goal. We're now operating in 3 dimensions, whereas the officials are kind of set up to work in a very binary 2-dimensional system. Is he inside of this line? Is he outside of that line? Did he push off? Did he not push off? And dealing with 3 dimensions, one of those dimensions being one that, depending on which it is, the partner does not have a good angle on, you have to somehow coordinate with that. So if I'm the backcourt referee and I'm looking at the 2-meter area from the horizontal perspective, side to side, I will tell my partner, if you hear me saying he's inside, I'm just talking about whether he's broken the plane from the side or not. I'm not I'm not making the ultimate determination on whether he's actually closer to the end line than 2 meters. And that's those little details are kind of important. Or if I have a partner who says, if I say get out, get ahead of the counterattack, and I have the other stuff covered. And you can, using that shorthand, kind of allows you to not be distracted by trying to figure out what your partner is saying. Without headsets, if you don't have them for some reason, and everybody should, or if you're working in a situation where headsets are not available or your headsets have failed, discuss what your hand signals are. The most common one is when you want to pass off an area. Personally, I will point to that area with my hand held low. And if I'm the person picking up that area, basically I'm going to sit there and I'm going to prominently pat my chest with my hand to let my partner know I'm going to pick that up. So make sure you're all on the same page when communicating. That would seem to be a pretty obvious thing for collaboration. So during the game, the most basic parts, make sure your partner is ready before starts and restarts. I have had cases where I'm waiting for a player to tie their cap, and I do not have my hands up to indicate that we're starting, and my partner starts us off, or I'm adjusting a cone. I've had other times where I've had my back to the pool, and I'm correcting the score sheet, and I hear the whistle blow because my partner's restarting. Or I will be telling a coach that they need to sit down and tone it down, giving them their warning, and play starts. So make sure your partner is ready to roll. Even if it's something minor, You know, don't jump out ahead of them. Um, so again, with this emphasis, if your partner's the tableside official, just hold up and wait and make sure they have time to check on the table, because a lot of times we will have students or players running the table and they're not necessarily expert at it. And when your score sheet gets messed up, or if the shot clock is not being administered correctly, that leads to a lot of problems with the coaches. The coaches expect everything to be run professionally, regardless of who's running it. If you have pretty intense game, a physical game, a game with some 50-50 calls, there's a lot of yelling and screaming. Just if it reaches that point, just take a pause, hold things up, and let everyone take a breath for a minute. A lot of times that helps to de-escalate things. So more in the details. Check your ego. So one thing you will find as you get to be a more experienced and advanced referee, you are probably not as good as you think you are, and you are most definitely not as bad as the coaches say you are. So when working with the partner, you're not out there to prove anything to anyone, which leads us to section 2. Some of us who are kind of old school, there was a mentality when we were coming up that there was a lot of competition and not a lot of slots for those higher level assignments. And so in a very kind of cutthroat way, people were taught to establish who kind of the alpha or lead official is. And sometimes that would mean stepping into your partner's area to kind of make them look like they don't know what they're doing, or establishing your style and imposing that on the pool. That is not being a good partner. That does not make you identify you as the better official. That identifies you as someone who is not a good official, in my opinion. You guys are a team, and how you are viewed individually as a team is largely dependent on how you officiate together. I was doing an advanced high school tournaments, and one of the more surprising compliments and feedback that I got from a coach once was, they said to me, Tiffany Urbanski was officiating with me, and they noted very specifically how well we worked together as a team. And I just thought that was one of the best compliments that someone could give. So our newer mentality is your quote unquote area is not sacrosanct. Other people can make calls, but being responsible for the whole pool doesn't mean you are primarily responsible for every area of the pool. You do have an area of primary responsibility where you have a better view of the action, and you have the ability to see certain pairs of players better. So focus more on your area of primary responsibility and help out where it's appropriate or where your partner might need help. You can kind of anticipate that a lot of times, but if you're worrying about what they're calling and you're stepping in to try and call it like you would call it, you're going to be missing your primary area of responsibility. And in the past, I've had more senior partners so worried about what's going on in my whole set that they miss things escalate right at their feet until someone gets punched in the face. So it doesn't make anyone better if you are neglecting your primary responsibility, worrying about your partner. So when you have a disparity in officials, and it's going to happen, sometimes it's not going to be kind of an equal standing. So you'll have a more experienced official and a much less experienced official, or maybe someone who has done games at a certain level a lot more than the other. You have to figure out how to make that work between you. So for the less experienced official, listen to what your partner is telling you and don't be defensive. Okay. Generally, they will be offering you advice. It may sound like they're just telling you what you're doing wrong. And to a certain degree, maybe it is, but it's about them sharing their experiences, their knowledge, helping you to improve your game. Take that as it is. Not everything that someone says is written in stone. You have to kind of evaluate it and filter it by what your angle was, what you saw. Sometimes you won't take that constructive criticism completely to heart. Sometimes you will, but be open to constructive feedback. If you're defensive, you're not going to advance. If you're an official, I've run into a few of these who have said, I've been officiating since the Stone Age and I know the game better than the rule book. Um, in that case, I often consider faking a medical emergency and getting the hell out of there because that's not going to be a good thing. So at any level, realize that you're going to make mistakes. At any level, realize that um, learning someone else's perspective might help you to improve your game, and especially be open to that if you're the less experienced official, because working with a higher level official is really a gift and an experience that you're not going to be able to get um, otherwise. That's a valuable resource, and take full advantage of it. One tendency for a less experienced official, even if you're trying to learn from the other, is that you tend to track the ball and follow the action and look at what's going there. If that's what you're doing, you're neglecting your primary area of responsibility at some point. If you're not watching your area, you're going to miss what happens. Your partner's going to start to worry about what you're doing, and things will deteriorate in general. So, and then this is also a matter of trust in your partner. If your partner has that as their primary responsibility and they have a good look at it, then why are you watching their action instead of what you're supposed to be watching? So these are things where if you're the less experienced person, this will help you to both be a more competent partner and to learn more from your more experienced partner. If you are the more seasoned official, it gets a little trickier because um, sometimes people want to help too much. So help where needed, but don't start blowing your whistle over the whole pool unless it's a situation where they've been assigned by an assigner who doesn't know them as well, and they're really not ready for that level. In that case, you might have to take control a little bit, but that doesn't mean anytime somebody blows a whistle, that isn't exactly how you would do it. Um, so you step in for judgment. If it's something that's key to how the rules are written, to what the points of emphasis are, or to administering a fair game. So if a player actually absolutely should be paid off for advantage and the less experienced officials kind of bailing out because they're a little timid about making a bigger call, don't be afraid to escalate that. Um, and certainly if it's a misapplication of the rules, you manage it, but also realize, and this is something I've run into quite a bit at, say, maybe the high school level where you have people who are more experienced. Um, Having more experience doesn't mean you get to overrule your partner necessarily. And certainly doesn't mean you get to overrule their judgment. There is no, I'm more senior, so my judgment overrides yours if you blow the whistle and make a call. That's simply not how it works. And if you have that attitude, again, uh, you're probably, in most cases, not good enough to do that. And I have found quite often people who do that are sometimes wrong about the rules. So they step in, override their partner, and make the wrong call. So make sure you trust your partner to make their decisions. Again, it's not a matter of style. We are striving for consistency, but there are two kinds of consistency. There is internal consistency, where as an official, I make my calls, I draw my line in the sand in a more and more predictable and reliable fashion. And when coaches are able to predict what I'm going to call, and players are as well, and even my partners, um, that means even if they don't agree with me, they're able to adjust and play to that or make calls to that. And that's really kind of it was the big flipping point for me when I kind of realized that where my line is and how I could figure that out. That helped me advance quite a bit. Um, External consistency is once you're able to be consistent in how you call the game, then you're making adjustments to try and adapt your game and improve it to more kind of the ideal that they want to see it at higher levels of competition and working with higher level partners. If you are stepping in because you don't like the style that your partner is calling the game with, your partner is never going to be able to develop internal consistency because you're not letting them blow the whistle. You're not letting them find the line. You're not letting them learn from their mistakes. And the game is going to be inconsistent as well. If I am trying to call a game because I think that's how an evaluator wants me to make specific calls, or I think that's how my partner wants me to make calls, or I'm worried about my partner stepping in and making their calls, then I'm trying to read their minds and I'm not trying to find my own consistent level. So you have to let your partner develop their own style and consistency, and you help them along with that. But stepping in and basically taking the whistle from them won't allow them to do that. Also, if you start blowing your whistle all over the pool and stepping in sometimes, but not others, that makes the game very inconsistent. Coaches and players won't know when your partner's making the calls. They won't know when you're going to step in and make the call. They won't be able to predict that and adjust to it, and the game will deteriorate because of that. So one official calling the whole pool to the detriment of the other official being able to call their areas is going to be an inferior outcome to partners working together, even if it's on an uneven level. Your partner has to make mistakes. Again, if they're not fundamental ones, let them make those mistakes and then talk about it, either on the headsets, if you can do it briefly, or during the breaks, and certainly after games. And when understanding what they were seeing, maybe what you saw from your angle was not actually a mistake, but them seeing something differently than you. So keep that in mind. This is the much harder part as an official, is knowing when to restrain yourself and when you're actually helping a less experienced partner. So regardless of skill levels, when to step in. So some areas where I'm going to step in, and I'm even going to anticipate stepping in, is when the action is such that my partner is obstructed from seeing things that I can see from my angle. So that's part of calling that 2 meter area. The most obvious one is whole sets are locked up, or a whole set is having ball side denied, and the position of their bodies blocks my partner's ability to see the hands of the offensive players. So I'm anticipating that I'm going to look for that release, and I'm going to look and see if that hand is on the defender when they release and make space. That's a gimme. I don't have to ask my partner's permission to help with that. And I know that I'm helping if I see that push off where they're shielded. If there's a lot of activity moving into my partner's area, they might not be able to attend to stuff that they normally would. So front court official, there's a whole set shaded more towards their half of the goal. They've got that player on the wing. Somebody does a crossing drive into that area. Then there's three pairs of players, and if a ball comes into someone moving into the other post, you're probably going to need to help them out with that. So anticipate helping that out. Be ready to step in. If I have headsets on, I'm probably going to let my partner know, hey, I'm going to pick that up. Chances are they've already asked me to anyways. Another example, the one that I really struggled with as front court referee, is if there's a shot on goal and then there's action right on the mouth of the goal. I have to watch and see if that ball is crossing the line. I have to watch and see if the goaltender under pressure is taking that ball under. I have to look and see if that goaltender is being fouled if the guy attacks him, or if the offensive player trying to pressure the goal is being held by the defender. All of that attracts my attention, and I have to focus it right to that area in front of the goal. Well, in the meantime, the defender on the wing is grabbing and throwing the former offensive player out of the way and kicking off of them. How do I monitor that and watch what's in front of the goal? And I asked Joe Pila about that at a tournament, and he said, "Oh no, I picked that up for you, obviously," which never even occurred to me before, that he would pick up something at my feet as a partner. But it makes sense because my attention can't be there, and he can see it from where he's at. So just be aware of situations where there are areas your partner can't look at, and try and keep that in your field of vision. And then finally, if you see very clearly something that your partner has missed, goalie tip. It's not a difference of opinion. If anyone sees a goalie tip, it's a tip. And sometimes on that penalty foul situation where the player is being fouled from behind, from your partner's angle, maybe they just see contact with the ball, but you can see that offhand on the body, sinking the player, or contact on the arm from an angle that your partner can't. If you see that contact and it's not on the ball, that's a very clear by the rules situation. You can probably step in and help on that. So this is my philosophy. Ultimately, having a good partner means that I can focus on my area because I'm confident that I don't have to worry about them. I don't have to watch what they're doing. I know that they can manage their area. I know that they will help me, and they know that I will step in and help them. And when that happens, that's when you get that synergy we're looking for. So I would just like to finish with a little bonus piece. And anyone who gets hip action gets bonus points for making that call correctly. Any questions or conversations?
Everyone's being quiet, so I think that's a good sign that you explained everything well.
Chris is practicing his dance moves, so no, that's
Good
good.
deal.
Oh, and we
Thanks,
almost
Andy.
got it in
Appreciate
under
it.
30 minutes. So I appreciate you guys asking me to kind of share that perspective. I was a little nervous about, whether I'm the guy to do it, but I have some opinions on working with partners, and I generally feel like people like working with me. So I thought this might be a good one. So
That's perfect. I appreciate it.
thank you very
Andy,
much for your time, everyone.
Andy, this is Philippe. I think that speaks a great portion of experience in the description, how you gave the collaboration between referees. And especially what I liked is like when you describe the situation without headsets, like, the finger pointing that to visualize the area your partner should see that you're not covering, or emphasizing with the clapping on the chest to, hey, I got this. Yeah, you keep your area, what you're watching. I think that's very important and very helpful. So that was cool.
Yeah, it's even though we have the headsets, you never know what's going to happen with technology, so you just got to be prepared and have a fallback plan in case you don't have them.
Andy, top shelf
Andy,
work,
I
my friend.
loved,
Thank you, Chris.
yeah, I loved your internal and external like vocabulary when you're describing consistency. I feel like that is something new, and I'm grateful for you explaining it that way. It's a simplified
I
version.
agree.
So well done.
Thank you. I will, it seemed pretty straightforward, but I'll send the PowerPoint to the office, and I'm sure they can share that with anyone if they want it for reference.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Andy. Great
Thanks,
job.
Andy. Have a good
See you
night.
Thank
soon.
you.
Take care.
Right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.